Actually, what I wanted to talk about was Snowy Valley. I'll just grab a drink, hold on. And we've got a representative from Snowy Valley here in the audience. It's Martin Canteros Paz. Luckily, he was able to come here today. So we started working with Snowy Valley Council earlier this year, and we were initially engaged to develop a zero waste strategy. And what was interesting about this collaboration has really been how the process and the experience of that has put waste on the agenda for Snowy Valley Council. So 6 months ago, I would say that not a lot of things were happening in waste in Snowy Valley Council. And what has happened since is through the development of the strategy, we ran a bunch of workshops, a bunch of community engagement. We had councillors engaged. There was road trips to visit other facilities. And in this very engaged process, there was also the local press who picked up the interest in what was happening. And in that, Martin was also successful in convincing the council to raise the rates. So with a lot of conversation about waste and with the rates raised, what really that meant was in the community, there was an expectation of things happening. And so there's a couple of things I wanted to highlight using Snowy Valley Council as an example. There's one thing that they're doing really well and trying to do better, and then also how they're kind of looking in their future possibilities. And I wanted to start a local scale. So I want to start by talking about their material recycling facility. As you can see in this picture, it is a very high-tech setup. We have a pile of recycling, and then we have a sorting belt. I'm sure a lot of people have seen this. There's a lot of similar setups around Australia. And what is special about this facility is that it's managed and operated by Valma Support Services, which is a disability support service. And they've had this contract for 9 years and successfully over that whole time maintained 12 people employed. And there's a few key things that they have done really well. One thing is that over the 9 years, I'm sure you've all heard about the China sword and the implications that that has had on certain recycling markets. The product that Valma Support Services have produced has never been impacted. So they've maintained a quality product so high that the China sword has had no impact on their ability to recycle and sell their product. And largely, how they succeeded in doing that is by focusing on employment. So as a disability support service, their main goal of running a business is to employ people in the local community. Their second goal is to produce a resilient business so they can employ people in the local community. And they want the product to be of such a high quality that they've got a resilient business that employ people in the local community. And the profitability that they can gain essentially will enable them to grow so they can employ people in the local community. So I guess it's interesting as a kind of contrast to some of these high-tech solutions we see in the urban areas like SKM. I'm sure you've all heard about and seen a lot of the big belts and big sites, but you know, the flip side of that is we've also seen that collapse, and we've seen that that has had environmental catastrophic impacts on here in Melbourne, but also that the product that they were producing, it was never focused on the quality product, it was always focused on profitability. And what that essentially resulted in was that that product was being returned to Australia because someone else saw that there was no profit in it. So a local solution like this, whilst probably less profitable, it has more environmental and more social benefits to the local community and to Snowy Valley. So a small-scale solution can be more beneficial. And that's some beautiful products they've been sending away over the years. The next local example from Snowy Valley is the process of composting facility. They don't have it up and running yet, and we've been assisting them in developing and thinking about what are the different options available to them. And through applying for New South Wales grant, we were really thorough in looking at what existing regional opportunities was there, and ideally being able to tie into something that was already there and not produce another industry that would compete with that. But in fully conducting a multi-criteria analysis, so looking again at the social and the environmental impacts, there was 3 key things that made sure that a regional solution, which is only 100 or 200 k's down the road, would not necessarily fulfill the greatest benefit. The first thing was that they have 5,000 tonnes a year of self-haul green waste. And whilst you might find finance in your waste rates to send the FOGO material collecting to a regional facility, I don't know any regional council that is going to be sending their self-haul green waste down to a regional facility. And I will say that Snowy Valley was doing a pretty good job of managing that green waste. They were shredding it and piling it up and trying to use it on internal projects. But it's not compost. You can't just put things in a pile and create compost. And we also know that that has associated methane emissions that is much greater than a properly aerated compost process has. And because it's not a commercially certified compost product, you can't actually establish a proper distribution of it. So that was the first thing. The second thing was to actually transport something a couple of 100 kilometres down the line. You need to build a transfer station. And by the time you compare paying for the transportation and building a transfer station to establishing a small-scale composting facility where you can also process your own self-haul green waste, the composting of your own waste started to look even more profitable. And the third thing was tying back to Valma. Keeping it local can have that impact where a local business take a certain ownership of the business and already has that industry connections. So Valma, although we haven't even looked at actually establishing this site, Valma has commenced conversation with the agricultural community. They've started talking about the importance of compost and their use and the importance of that on land application and other benefits of water retention and soil retention and carbon retention. And also for Snowy Valley to recognise that whilst we're looking at waste management, we're also looking at climate change policy and how one thing is not separate from the other, and keeping it at a local scale can enable a better environmental income as well as contributing more jobs to a local scale. So whilst those are 2 examples that make sense on a small scale for a local, for a regional council, some things don't always make sense on that smaller scale on a regional community because those low waste demand truly have an impact. And there's a lot of regional collaboration with New South Wales Regional Group and Victoria Regional Groups. There's the CDS, there's the CRC, there's product stewardship, and there's drum muster. But there's also more out there. And so one key thing that Snowy Valley did right 6 months ago, or probably more a year ago, was they employed someone ambitious and passionate who actually took the time to go, what other opportunities is there? Already there, waiting to just be looked at. And what he found was, of course, that in Kutamunda Gandagai, I think Gandagai is famous for something, but I don't know what it is. But down there, they had a tyre and a mattress recycling, and the thing that made that interesting was, although landfill levies don't apply at Snowy Valley Council, landfill still occurs a cost. There's a cost of transportation, there's cost of the gate fee, there's the cost of employing someone to manage the waste to go there. And so any recycling opportunity that costs less than that landfill is a cost saved. And so they introduced the tyre and the mattress recycling just a couple of months ago, and they're also looking at silage and they're looking at polystyrene. So there's a lot of regional opportunities already there. And when it's not there, that's really where we can see the great opportunity for where it can be. And I think today some of these speakers, from the Minister to the Waste to Energy and from Sustainability Victoria, we can see that the key theme is that as early as 2020, Australia is looking to ban exportation of recycling, and that really means that there is a reinvigoration of the national ability to recycle within Australia. And I think that that opportunity is even greater for a regional area where you have space and you have the opportunity to collaborate between your regional councils to look at processing, maybe to the degree which Valma does, or to a greater degree, but also look at that next step of production. So one of the images here is a agricultural waste created food packaging, and then we have a waste to energy facility. And so those are some of the opportunities that exist in the regional area, and that I really hope that the regional area looks to take up in the next couple of years. So to sum up those key points, I think there's an opportunity for regional councils to think small, so look at those local solutions for the true holistic benefits that can be harnessed within your local council, and think big and innovate and collaborate between your regional councils to bring the industry and bring the second generation of manufacturing to the regional areas. And the third thing is to employ a waste officer to put waste on the agenda in your regional in your regional council. And if you can't afford to employ a waste officer, at least add it to the title of someone within your council. Thank you.